Mayor Adams' office is in turmoil. Four deputy mayors resigned, and seven prosecutors as well also resigned coming off of this. We're hearing that Governor Hochul is holding meetings to consider whether removing him from office. What does this mean for the state of New York City and New York City politics? We're here to talk about it. Of course, I'm Mike Scala, and this is Nuance, joined as always by Jay Carter, also known as Timid, the hip hop artist and the chair of BLM Tokyo. So, Jay, what does this mean for New York City?
Yeah, this is definitely something we're gonna have to get into, and we want to hear from the people as well. We want to hear your comments and your thoughts and opinions, so drop those in the comments, and then of course like and subscribe to the channel. Yeah, Mike, this is very crazy. There's a lot of resignations going on recently, like not even just in this case, but in general. But let's talk about this. What's the deal with this here? What's happening?
Right. Well, four deputy mayors resigned. Now, right off the bat, when people hear deputy mayor, they I think it's like vice president, right?
Right.
Second in command. But in New York City, there are multiple deputy mayors. So there isn't just one, right? Deputy mayors in charge of different things. Four of them resigning all suddenly, which is a signal to some that maybe they know something is up, right? Maybe they're hearing things, maybe they have some information or something, right? But it doesn't seem coincidental that four would resign at the same time. On the other side of things, you're seeing prosecutors from the DOJ resign because they were instructed to drop the case against him. And we've covered this in the past here on Nuance, the indictment, right? He was facing federal charges. Well, the Trump administration now came in and they've instructed the DOJ to drop the case. Incidentally, the judge in that case is now demanding that the prosecutors stand before the court and justify, explain why the charges are being dropped, right? Because this doesn't pass the smell test. To some, of course, there was speculation that perhaps Mayor Adams would receive a pardon. Well, instead of going that route, the prosecutors have been instructed to file a motion to dismiss the case or withdraw the case without prejudice, right? Meaning they could bring it back later. So not quite the same thing as a pardon, but effectively he'd be off the hook legally, right? What is the fallout of this? Now you're seeing the governor meet with top officials around the city to consider whether the mayor should be removed from office. Now, why? She does have the power legally to do it, but what is the timing of this? She's doing this right after effectively the charges are being dropped against the mayor. So that may smell funny to some people too, right? What is their angle here? What is going on here? If he's being cleared effectively of his legal troubles, why are they immediately moving now to remove him through the political process?
Right. And there was it's all kind of weird. It's just this whole situation these days is just weird. But what you mentioned as far as being dismissed without prejudice and being able to bring that case back up again at any time is another thing that some people are wary of, because then that means that it's this looming over Mayor Adams's head, and so potentially it could be a quid pro quo type of situation where it's like, okay, listen, you do what we tell you to do, or we're going to bring this case back up. And so some people are concerned about that situation as well.
Sure. Well, that cuts both ways, right? Because if you thought that legally he should have stood trial, right? That maybe there was something to that indictment and you wanted to let that legal process play out, maybe it's a win or a moral victory in a sense for it to be able to come back, for this not to be the final resolution on this, right? Maybe it doesn't seem as harsh or as drastic an action to pull back without prejudice. It's like saying we're dropping it for now, but you're not off the hook. But to your point, right? Could this be used as political leverage? Because that's, I think, the larger conversation here that many are saying that, and I sound like Trump when I say that, right? Many are saying, but many are saying and speculating that there is some kind of deal going on where this will be held over Adams' head potentially, or maybe even just it's a favor for a favor deal. Listen, I got you off the hook on your case. Now you have to do my bidding in New York, basically. And you are
Right.
seeing the mayor kind of doing that, right? I mean, I don't want to go into details as far as what he specifically is doing necessarily, but just the way he's talking so far, he's been very friendly to the administration. His defense of that is he's friendly to all administrations, right? He was friendly to Biden. He's going to be friendly to Trump. His job is to advocate for the city of New York, which is the biggest city in the country. And so it behooves us to have the support of the president, whoever that may be. That's his stance on it. But a lot of people now, especially amidst a Democratic primary, let's not forget, aren't really buying that, right? They're saying you are the
Right.
democratically elected mayor of New York City. You're a Democrat, at least you're supposed to be a Democrat, right? That's how you got elected. Why are you, or why does it look like you're kissing up to this administration, which is showing that it doesn't have New York City's values at heart?
Right. And to that one point about, the potential for that quid pro quo, there was, and I forget the name right now, one of a Trump administration representative was in an interview with Adams and basically said, like, if he doesn't do what this is, what he said he was going to do, next step would be I'd be in your office asking you why you didn't follow our deal.
Or
And so
deal?
people are latching on to that.
Wow.
I have to find that quote
Now,
exactly.
we mentioned at the top here that it wasn't just deputy mayors who resigned, prosecutors as well, right? 7 of them in the DOJ office. They're saying that basically this is unethical, right? We have a case going, federal case going against the mayor, and we don't have a valid reason to drop the case. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in court, right? When the judge wants them to present their case as to why these charges should be dropped, right? So you have at least 7 people within the office saying that they can't, in good conscience, stay on board while this is
Right. Yeah. And someone they did the resignation letter for some of the people was posted as well. And so a lot of people seem disappointed with that. My question that I always have when we see these resignations pop up is like, why resign instead of fight? Because if you resign, they're going to put in people who are loyal to them and it's going to get executed anyway.
well, you don't really have that option. If you're working in the prosecutor's office and the orders are coming from above to not pursue a case, right? In this instance, you can't say, well, I'm going to pursue it anyway. You'll get fired at that point.
Well, this is the opposite. It's like, well, I guess no, they're doing that anyway. Yeah, I was thinking of another part because there's been so many resignations recently. But yeah, and just this idea of so many people are resigning. Um,
Listen, I like it. I
and
think
they're gonna be putting loyalists in, and is there gonna be no kind of it's not even that there's not gonna be pushback, but there's also not going to be uh any reporting on what's happening because they'll
they don't
keep
have
it
a
hush. They'll
choice.
just
That's
do
the
it.
thing. What are they supposed to do? They can either go along with it. And as a lawyer, we do have ethical considerations here. I know people like to
Sure.
say, lawyers are slimy and, but there are very strict ethical guidelines that we are bound to.
Sure.
And, if we can't be a zealous advocate for our client, if we don't believe in what's going on, we are not ethically allowed to pursue that course of action. So their options are, if they believe this is wrong, they can suck it up, I guess, and say, I'm going to do my job anyway, even if I have a conflict of interest there ethically, right? There may be some considerations. Maybe they can talk themselves into staying on the job and continuing the case. And, in this case, I guess it would be discontinuing the case, right? But
Right.
if they don't, like I said, they're going to get fired. And so there's no way to prevent that loyalist from being in there unless you want them to stay on the job and quiet quit, like do the work as effortlessly as possible, like, pretend you're doing the job for them, but really not. Again, as a lawyer, that's not how you're supposed to be behaving.
Yeah, it's just yeah, and I get that. I mean, there's really not a lot, and not anything they can do that, but it just seems like it's so hopeless in this regard, to things being executed that is just in essence of us flushing everything down the toilet. It's like how do we prevent these types of things?
This
How
is
do we
why
fight back?
elections matter. You prevent it by winning elections, right? People sometimes say, we've talked about that on here before as well, elections don't
Yeah,
matter, the president doesn't matter, things never change. Well, when you start looking at the minutia, right, you start looking at these things that are happening, you realize it's all very consequential, right? When
right.
the people voted for this administration, this is what they got as a result. So if you don't like it, then next time you should vote the other way. But that's a consequence of the election, right? There's really no way to prevent people being appointed by the administration when that's their job, that's their duty, right? That's what they're elected to do, put people in these different positions. Now,
Right.
I like the idea of people resigning to signal that something is wrong here, right? I mean, if they just quietly step down or let themselves get fired or something like that, then at least the narrative that we got wouldn't have gotten out there, right? I mean, at least now there's more noise about this and we're talking about it because they very
Makes sense.
publicly resigned, right? And they called BS on this. They threw a red flag on a play. And so that may even be part of the reason why the judge is demanding now that they show up, who was left in that office, right? Shows up and justifies why these charges should be dropped.
Right. The quote that I was talking about, I found it here, was with the White House border czar Tom Homan.
Mm-hmm.
They were on, it was him and Adams were on Fox and Friends. And Homan said that he said, I came to New York City and I wasn't going to leave with nothing. And he said, if Adams doesn't follow through here, I'll be in his office up his butt if he doesn't follow through with the commitment we made. Now, it could be innocuous, it could be just like talk, but this idea coupled with what we're talking about here, with this potential quid pro quo, it sounds pretty ominous, and people are latching on to that.
Yeah, and I agree. It's something that needs to be looked at, scrutinized, investigated.
Yeah,
Right? My concern now, though, is you have the governor holding these meetings, talking to people, most of whom are political opponents, have always been opposed. I shouldn't say in all cases always, but for better or worse, these are people now who are against the mayor, and she's asking them should she remove him from office, which is her uh, prerogative, right? She's allowed to do that legally. What's really going on here? I mean, to me, it would seem like these people who are, in some cases, publicly calling for the mayor to resign are going to be telling the mayor in these meetings, I mean, telling the governor in these meetings that she should remove him, right? And then is she going to remove him and say, well, I didn't know if I was going to, but I listened to what my local leaders in New York City and they advised me to, right? Um, I don't know if that's going to happen, but it does seem a bit fishy that it's all going down this way in the midst of an election, right? The primary is in
right.
June, general election is in November. Of course, if Adams does not win the Democratic primary, let's be honest, he's not going to be reelected. So you only have a couple months remaining. Why is the governor now potentially taking the step of removing him from office instead of leaving it to the voters in a couple months?
There's two things there. I didn't know that the governor could remove a mayor outright, even though the mayor was democratically elected.
Yeah,
That's a surprise to me. I know they could call from the step down, but I thought ultimately they had to make that decision themselves.
right.
And two, this, doing this now, I mean, I can see why, because whatever the access that the quid pro quo, this alleged quid pro quo that the mayor has engaged in, removing him could prevent that from happening.
Could, but again, you
Could,
said alleged, right? We don't have it
alleged.
proven on that. I mean, unless the governor comes out with a folder and says this is what we've got,
Right,
substantial.
right, right.
As far as we know, these are just speculations at this point. And so, do you feel comfortable removing the mayor, forcing the mayor out of office without due process, essentially, without proving anything against him, coming off the heels of his case being dismissed? Now, we may not like how it was dismissed and have our issues with that, but objectively speaking, right, he
Right.
was by some measure cleared of the legal trouble, right? So let's say he beat the case. He just beat his case legally. Now immediately we're going to let's yank him from office politically through this mechanism that the governor can use, as opposed to leaving it to the people in a couple months.
Well, I think we'd have to see what with Hochul, what kind of info or data that Hochul has, right, to move her to take such a drastic action. Um,
Well, what if she
because
just
the
comes out?
idea,
Okay,
I was gonna say the idea of having the mayor, like you said, of one of the biggest cities in the world being a pawn is very scary.
sure.
And And even if there are questions to that regard, then definitely need to be taken seriously and looked into.
They do, but we again, the election is in a couple of months. It's getting to
Yeah, but a lot can
February.
happen in a couple of months.
Okay, March, April, May, and yeah, to your point there, the primary may be in June, but even if you go through the process, the mayor loses, let's say the primary doesn't win the general election, you still won't get a new mayor in office until next year. So you still have,
Exactly.
right, almost another year there. So that is a consideration. But I do think we need to have something substantial. What if the governor comes out and says, I'm removing the mayor from office because we don't think he's able to effectively run New York City with this talk, with these allegations hanging over his head, right? With people being afraid that he could be working with the president in an inappropriate way without anything being proven, right, or
Right,
demonstrated, but
right.
just because the speculation is out there, these allegations are out there. Would
Yeah.
that be right? Would that sit right by saying we don't really know, but because we're accusing him of this, we think he can no longer
Right.
do his own job?
The problem with that is that that would then become a tool to remove mayors from the office all the time.
Exactly. Exactly.
Um,
Because again, these people who are now stirring up the pot are the ones who are politically opposed to him. They're the ones calling for him to
sure,
resign, right? Some of them are trying to benefit personally from him not being there anymore. And
sure,
so now that's the situation where these people who don't want him in office are going to make accusations. And again, we don't know what's true and what's not there. But at this point, we can only say that they're allegations. It's just speculation. But it's
sure,
right? It's allegations that they are bringing up. They're drumming up. Again, whether it's true or not, they're the ones putting this forward. And they're going to say in the next breath, because those allegations are out there that we put out, you can no longer do your job. Like we made it so hard on you to do your job, you must go now. Like you said, that becomes a very dangerous tool, in my opinion, as well, for
sure.
people to use. And ironically, kind of the same thing as what happened to Cuomo, right? They forced Andrew Cuomo out of office, not quite the same way. It wasn't the governor. He was the governor, so he didn't remove himself from office. But then again, he did by resigning, right? Under the pressure. So I say ironically because he may benefit from this, right? If Adams is forced out, Cuomo is still the front runner in the mayoral race. It basically takes away his potentially strongest or, biggest competitor.
I would imagine, and again, this is also speculation. I would imagine and I would hope that if she does take that step to remove him from office, she has, verifiable proof of reason to do so.
I would hope so too. Although
Okay, yeah, I'm saying I would hope. I'm not
I
saying
would
that
hope
she
so.
has
I'm
it.
not too
I'm saying,
yeah, I'm not too confident we're going to get that. I'll be honest with you.
so do you think that she's going to take that step to remove him?
I don't know. It's 50-50 on that right now. Maybe honestly, maybe 60-40. Yes, but it could go either way. Now, I did see some quotes coming out of these meetings. I know some people were disappointed that Al Sharpton was part of these meetings, but he does have a big faith-based group and holds influence
Right.
in the city, so he was there. And I don't think he's calling on the mayor's resignation publicly at this point, but he's saying, these are all very serious things that need to be looked into, essentially. And
Yeah.
then Borough President Donovan Richards also was part of these meetings, and he issued a statement today saying that the mayor needs to take a deep look at whether he thinks he can continue doing the job with all this hanging over his head effectively. And so he hasn't outright, at least not in that statement, not that I've seen, called for the mayor to step down yet. And these are two people who are
Right.
in the meetings. So maybe, right? I know there are others. Adrienne Adams, the speaker of the city council, certainly has called for the mayor's resignation. So she, I'm
Mm.
sure, is in those meetings saying, take him out, right? But maybe some people are saying he's got to go. Some people are saying, well, maybe he shouldn't be in there, but we need to make sure we have enough proof before we take him out. So it's possible the governor does that and says, I've talked to them, and while we have serious concerns and we'll keep an eye on this, we are not going to take action without something more concrete. That's possible.
Mm.
I'm not entirely confident in that. You know what I mean? I think there's at least a substantial chance that she does take him out, saying that she met with everyone and on balance, the feedback she got was that he is unable to continue representing New York City with all the trouble that he's in, which again, he was technically just cleared of that trouble legally. And so to me,
Yeah, it's
even
tech,
though
and
I've been
it's
a critic, I've been
cleared
a
on a
critic,
technicality.
Yeah, but I've been a critic of the mayor. I don't like
Right.
the way that smells. It's, you, again, you beat your case. You won, quote unquote, you won in the legal system, even if we think that's, not a real victory, whatever. Bottom line is these charges are going away here. As soon as the case goes away, like we're talking immediately after now,
But even gone away during by using foul play, like
by
do
using
we?
foul play.
Yeah,
Well,
like come on,
have we
it's. I
proven
know we
foul play?
can't. I listen. The mayor's been basically campaigning for this type of a pardon from the Trump administration by cozying up to him. And like I said before, maybe he's saying, "Oh, I do this to every administration. It's good to have those relations." But a lot of people look at it, and even myself, I'm looking at it, said he did this to get himself out of trouble.
I agree
So
with that, by the way.
in that way, it's not that the charges went away because there was reason for them to go away. It's because it was some sly stuff on the back end. Like it was a little
That may be the case, but the bottom line is, well, not the bottom line because that's part of the show, but the, uh, the fact remains, I guess I should say. Number one, regardless of how or why it happened, it seems like it is happening. So, in other words, we're not getting
right,
a conviction, and everyone is entitled to innocence until being proven guilty in the court of law, right? And that has not happened. So, regardless of what the process was here, we don't have to like it. It remains that he has not been convicted. It looks like he won't be convicted of these things.
right,
And so to come out
right,
of that, right, and go immediately into, well, the governor should remove him now because the legal avenues failed, right? It seems like we couldn't get him on that. So now we're going to try this other mechanism that we have, this other trick that we can do, this other card that we can play. Well, what is the rationale for that? He
right.
just beat his case, and so now we're going to try to get him out another way. You know what I mean? Like we don't have to like how it went down, but he wasn't convicted. And so why are we saying you beat your legal troubles, however you did it, and now you can't do your job as mayor anymore? I mean, wouldn't you say on some level that should make it easier for him or less difficult to do the job with the case no longer hanging over his head?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if the case is out of the way, um, at the same time, it could also, I mean, that just because the case went away, the distrust that people would have had in him doesn't go away with that pardon or drop of the case or anything like that. That's still there.
Yeah.
And so whether it makes it completely easier or not, I think is up for debate. Um, and I think we do want the legal system to play out. We want our systems to work as they're supposed to without having like these vendettas or this type of thing. I just wonder, with all that's happening,
Mm-hmm.
it's our systems kind of being used against us in order to push this further and further control by this administration and by the varying entities. And we're playing by the rules and they're not, and then things are getting advanced in their favor.
So
Not
yeah.
saying we should abandon what we do, but should we not look at different tactics or evaluate how we're doing this? Because if we're playing by the rules and someone's playing by a different set of rules, then we're not, gonna come out on top like we want, or the justice is not gonna happen.
So do you think maybe that's a little bit of what this is? Maybe I don't know if sour grapes is the right phrase, but basically we lost the case, right? The legal avenues didn't work. And so now we're going to try whatever we can, whatever options there are, just to fight back, even if it doesn't
I
seem
don't know.
above board so much or like the best thing to do. We're just doing it because they're getting down and dirty, and so are we. And we kind of going to throw decency out the window here.
I don't know. Um, I don't know. I mean, I would hope they have more information than the public has, and they're making these decisions based on some things. But then again, like you said, there's also some of the people raising some of these questions are opposition of the mayor, and so they probably wanted him out anyway. And this is a
Right.
good way, so
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just of the mind, like a lot of people in this country, that with all this stuff going on, it's really scary to have these types of political dealings happening and cases getting dropped, people getting by on things, and these are at the highest levels of government, and it just doesn't seem like there's anything for the people to do or that's going to benefit them.
Right. I hear you on that as well. Now, we should point out that this would be an unprecedented move. Never before in history has the governor of New York State removed a mayor using this
Mm,
mechanism. And it came close to happening a couple times. FDR, in fact, almost did it when he was governor. But in the past, when it came close to happening, the mayor resigned before it could happen. And so, with that in mind, I wonder if that's the play here, because you do
force them to
have,
resign.
yeah, you do have, like I said, Speaker Adams, not right, not Mayor Adams, but Adrienne Adams, the Speaker of the New York City Council. She issued a statement calling for his resignation. Others have as well. I wonder if they're holding these meetings, right? Because again, this is happening in a very public way, right? The governor wants everyone to know she's meeting with all of our leaders in New York City to see if Mayor Adams should be removed. Is this a power play to try to get him to resign before she could even come out with that decision?
I don't think he would. We've talked about Mayor Adams and things that he's been doing and going through on the show. From the sense of that and just watching, I don't think he's the type that would resign. I think he's the type that you'd have to drag him out of that office kicking and screaming.
What if, okay, but what if he got wind? Again, four deputy mayors resigned. Have they heard something? And that's also why I think there's more speculation that maybe the governor is about to remove him, because
Mm,
these four deputy mayors all left, right? Did they hear something? What if the mayor is being told that, listen, it's coming, whether you like it or not, at some point soon the governor is going to be removing you unless you resign first? Would he rather keep his dignity and resign, much like the prosecutors, right, in the DOJ office, or would he rather be fired?
I think he'd rather be fired because then he
Really?
could go out like a martyr.
Water?
Like I was doing my job. I was working to protect New Yorkers and they came in and took me out of there. I just from what I've seen of him, I think I think that's what he would do.
Now, he compared this to Mein Kampf. Did you see
Oh,
that?
no, I didn't.
Yeah, which struck me as odd, especially because he's being criticized. Maybe that's why he did it, try to flip the narrative on his head, because he's being criticized with, cozying up to the current administration, which has often been compared to Nazis, right?
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
he's saying that they're going after him this way. He said something like it comes straight out of Mein Kampf, the way that they're going after him. And he has played that martyr card before, where he
Mm,
said that the reason why they were busing immigrants or migrants to New York was because he was a black mayor. So
hmm.
maybe you're right. Maybe he would rather go out like that, and then he can kind of go on this crusade saying, listen, I was a black mayor, the second black mayor in history, and look what they did to me. That could be,
Right,
you know, we also should emphasize this point. Whether he's removed or not, he is allowed to run for re-election or election, right? So
right,
he could still be a candidate, and maybe that could become part of his campaign. Although honestly, his shot realistically seems to be decreasing more and more by the day, and all this is obviously playing a big role in that. So, will he even be a candidate? And that was something
right,
that came up today as well. I think it was Al Sharpton who said, "I don't even know if the mayor is going to be a candidate for reelection." So,
right.
I don't know. Right? Those are two different things. Whether he's removed from office and whether he stands for reelection, but as we mentioned, the petitioning is happening this month, and so these decisions, even for Cuomo, right? Everyone's got to decide very quickly whether they're in
Right.
or out.
Do we know why the deputy mayors resigned? Did
No,
they?
I didn't see. I didn't see that.
Because they like you said, you mentioned the possibility that maybe they heard something's coming down the pipeline, they're getting out of Dodge. Or I'm wondering if it could be that they just don't they just don't like the situation, what's going on. They want to distance themselves from him. Him getting closer to this administration and the favors potentially it's happening, and they don't want to be a part of it, and they're getting out of Dodge that way.
Right. Now, if he were to be removed from office now, you would have the public advocate become the acting mayor. as Jumaane
Mm,
Williams, right? But again, we have the election. The election is
right.
about to start, and so we're going to have to see, does
But
he
see,
run for re-election? Even does he stay in office? Is he out but he tries to get back in through the election? There are a number of
right.
different ways this can play out.
Yeah, but even though the election is about to start, there's still a whole year of that term left. So that's a lot of governing that can happen
Right.
in that time. So I think it's making sure someone is in that position and doing the job is still of very high importance, even though the election's coming.
I agree with that, but I think it's also a long play. I think they are looking towards the next 4 years, right? And I
Yeah.
think a lot of this is about seeing if we can remove Eric Adams' chances of getting back into office. So it is about this
Yeah.
year, but I think it's about much more than that, right?
Yeah.
The progressives, the leftists in New York City, obviously are not a fan of the mayor, right? At this point, most Democrats, regardless of where they are ideologically, are not fans of the mayor. But the calls for him to resign are mostly coming from the left wing of the party. And I think they may see it as their chance to benefit the most by getting him out the way. Although some are saying, listen, be careful what you wish for, because if you're saying that Adams isn't progressive enough and you get rid of him, you may be opening the door even more for Cuomo to come in, and the progressives never liked him either. So uh, I don't think you really have a situation here where there's a progressive candidate who really is going to come in, unless here's maybe what they're hoping for. Maybe Jumaane Williams as acting mayor runs with the power of quasi incumbency. Maybe that's what they're
Right.
thinking is their best shot at stopping Cuomo at this point. Adams could be a football. Maybe they're not even scared of Adams as much as they're scared of Cuomo at this point. Some people might look at it
Yeah.
like that, right? Like we have to stop
Well, the
Cuomo.
numbers.
Right. Those numbers are enormous for him. And at this
Right.
point, you have several progressive candidates running, and they're all kind of eating each other's vote, but no one's really making too much noise in this. Maybe, and this is just spitballing, speculating, right? Maybe some are looking at this as, if you get Adams out the way, Jumaane Williams becomes the acting mayor. He could run as the progressive incumbent against Cuomo. Maybe that's what they're hoping for.
Yeah, personally, I'm less concerned about those scenarios and more concerned about the mayor being in the pocket of the Trump administration.
Right.
That concerns me a lot more than whether the Democrat takes over is more progressive than the
I
other
see.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But see, I agree with that. I just am looking at this. I'm looking at who the players are in this, what their motivations are, what their
Mm,
politics are, right? What's happened before, like we saw it happen with Cuomo. Somebody's saying people are involved in this, that were involved in that when they forced him out. And I do think to them, a lot of this is about getting rid of Adams because he's not perceived as progressive enough, and wanting to put someone more progressive in there. They wouldn't be happy with Cuomo, right? These people, these progressives who are trying to get rid of Adams actively right now, would not be happy with Cuomo in there.
all right, I'll do it. I mean, you don't have to twist my arm. Just I'll do it. They could put me in there. I'll take over the last year of Adams's term.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
listen, if you would have run for public advocate and won, then you might have been in that spot right now.
Yeah, right.
For the
So,
record, Jumaane Williams, who was also a client of Bryant Bystroff, right, the firm I represent, full disclosure, but publicly he has stated that he would not run for mayor unless he was the acting mayor, right? Unless Adams
mm,
resigned, then he would consider running. But
right.
this needs to, again, happen very quickly because petitions are due in about a month, a little over a month here. So, they got to get on the ball if they're going to do it.
Right. Absolutely. So
Yeah, that's
I
what's going
think we have
on.
a poll around this, right?
We do. We do. We want to hear from everyone out there. What are your thoughts on this? So, the poll question of the week is: should the governor remove New York City Mayor Eric Adams from office, or should the voters decide his fate in this year's election? And I really think, this is my vote. I'll throw the first vote in here. I think we should leave it to the voters. Failing, more concrete proof than what we've seen, right? If you show me proof that there was a quid pro quo, that there's something going on, you have actual evidence that he has sold his soul to the White House or whatever, show me that, right? And then we can have that discussion, because that is a very serious and real consideration. And like you said, it isn't just about the next 4 years, it is about the rest of this year too. So
Right.
that is very valid. But if you don't have that, if this is just a political play at this point, I don't like it. I think let the voters decide.
It sets up a precedent that could set a trend that we don't want.
I agree. I agree.
Um, it'll make it difficult for anybody to govern at that point if this becomes something that's used all the time.
Right. 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 And again, it never happened before. So this would be the first time. And so you kind
Yeah.
of knocking down that dam in a sense, right? Like you're opening the floodgate.
Yeah. But
But
we are in some unprecedented times right now.
that we are. That we
You
are.
know, this is craziness.
Well,
I don't know. I've been trying to take my mind off of some things, playing a little bit of online poker just to
oh, you've been
de-stress.
playing?
Yeah, yeah, we should get a game sometime.
We should. Yeah, we should get a friendly game going with some of our peoples.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like I don't know if you've ever used Full Tilt.
I did years ago, never for money though, just
Yeah,
the
yeah,
yeah,
play money in there,
yeah.
and you can set up your own tables and have invites to only people that you want to come in and play. So,
Okay, yeah, that's cool. I used to do tournaments on there, but what used to kind of bug me a little bit about those tournaments, and I don't know if you experienced if it still goes on now, you would join a tournament, and again, since it's all play money, it's not real money. What you would have
right,
most people do, or a lot of people in the tournament do, is go all in the first hand, right? Because they figure, well, if they lose, all right, I'll just join another tournament. It's not costing me anything. I'll just keep joining tournaments until I win the first hand. But then when they win
right.
that first hand, they get lucky that first time. Now they have more money going into the rest of the tournament. And so I thought that was kind of a cheap trick, maybe much like what the governor is considering here. I wasn't really a fan of that.
Right, right. Well, a lot of people do that. Yeah. But
Happens when
you
there's no
know,
consequences, right? When you're not losing any of your actual money, it's like I'll go all in every hand until I win.
yeah. A lot of times they get taken out quite quickly.
Yeah,
But or they'll win big and then they can like chill out for a little
that's what
bit.
they yeah, that's what they would do a lot. They would go all in the beginning and then just kind of sit tight and eat the blind, right? Because the blinds will keep increasing, and
Right.
you can survive that. I never actually played a tournament in real life. When I go to the poker tables, I play a cash game and I
Right.
stick to my strategy. I'm like a little computer there, and usually it's a winning formula, right? You're not going to win every single time, you can't, but if you stick to that formula, if you're making the right decisions on a consistent basis, you will win more than you lose. And that's what I do. And so I'm profitable playing cash games in the casinos. I've never done an actual tournament though.
Yeah, I do tournaments on the game.
Uh,
I've done the free roll tournaments where they're actually the prize is money, but you can enter for free. And it's not a lot of money. It's like,
yeah,
like the first I think you like the top 10 places are paid in varying increments.
right.
So I've done that and I've actually gotten into some of the last tables on a few of them. But I've been a very conservative player, and I'm trying to be a little bit more aggressive, to make my odds of winning better than before. Because
Right. In a
you
tournament, you
can
need
be
to get more aggressive.
conservative and huh?
In a tournament, you have to get more aggressive at times.
Right. So you can be a conservative player and kind of like coast through to
Yep.
the end if you win just a couple of hands here and there to keep
Yeah.
staying at least in the average or a little bit below.
Right.
Um, but you don't win that way.
Right.
I'm trying to increase that. And so I've been doing some of these three-person table tournaments.
Hmm.
And I win pretty good in that regard.
Yeah.
Being a little bit more, and what I mean conservative is I wouldn't bluff very often. I wouldn't go in on a hand if my first two cards weren't that good. Now I try to go in on pretty much every hand and just wait until the flop comes down and then try to make a decision there.
Well, yeah, but that's with three people at the table. Like you wouldn't do that with a full
Yeah.
table.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
So it depends.
it depends, but that's one of the reasons why I stay away from tournaments. I mean, I probably would do some for fun, see how I do, but it's really a different strategy, and I
Yeah,
think there is more luck that goes into it, and just
sure.
different gameplay, right? Like you got to look at how many blinds you have left with, and the blinds, like we said, they keep raising, and so there sometimes will come a moment where you basically have to play all in or nothing,
Right.
right? Because you got to double up your stack, otherwise you're not gonna be able to handle the blind structure anymore. When you just play at a cash game at the casino, those blinds never change, and so you can keep your strategy. Now, you may switch up your play if people are starting to pick up on what you're doing, and you got to switch it up a little bit, right? One of the tactics is it's actually good to bluff someone and show the table that you bluffed, because
Yes.
then they'll think that when you do bet, maybe you're bluffing, right? And then this way they'll actually pay your bet when you have something good, because otherwise,
Right.
especially at lower stakes, people tend to be conservative and they'll fold out a lot.
Yeah.
So, it does allow you to bluff more, but you want people to be able to call those bluffs too.
Right. Yeah.
Not call them bluffs. You want them to to call you when they think you're bluffing, but you're not.
Right. Absolutely.
So
So,
yeah,
yeah, might have to do that one of these days. And we had a poll from last week.
yes,
We've got comment results. We don't have number results.
okay.
So I put the poll in on the post, and to remind everyone, the poll was, what are your thoughts on the 2025 Super Bowl halftime show?
Mhm.
And I put the poll in, but for some reason it didn't show up on the post,
Hmm.
but it's showing up now after all the initial comments have already happened, so no
Okay,
one's voted.
okay.
It's weird. But we did have a number of comments here.
Well, it's
Um,
appropriate because it's an open-ended question, right? What do you think about it? What are your thoughts on it? And so people can just give their thoughts, not really a yes/no question.
right. Well, I put responses of it was great, it was okay, I didn't like it, it was inappropriate. Those are the ones I
Okay.
put in.
What are the comments like?
Um, the comments were like, so we got someone that said they saw it and it went completely over their head, but reading the commentary and rewatching it, now they've figured it out. They said they have to admit they've never heard of Kendrick Lamar or Drake, but they can see why Kendrick won all those awards because it was brilliant and well performed. Musically, he lamented
Cardboard
the
box.
lack of musicians on stage.
I was just looking around for a cardboard box. I can't find one around. Go ahead.
A cardboard box or what?
It seems like this guy's been living.
Right. He said, musically, I lamented the lack of musicians on stage, but the message was very right on. Um,
Okay.
so it seemed to be a couple of people, and I'm assuming the audience here seemed to be a little bit older because someone responded to him saying, I'm with you on that. I'm old enough to realize that I'm no longer the target audience.
Mm.
Um, now, never hearing of Kendrick Lamar, I can get that, but never
Yeah.
hearing of Drake?
Right. It's a bit peculiar.
Yeah, I mean, he must be heavily into a different genre of music completely.
Sure. Well,
Um,
to be fair, I've obviously heard of these artists. I
yeah,
don't know many songs by either of them. I probably know more Drake songs, but not too many. Right. And he's
right.
got a ton of hits. I don't know if I can name more than like two or three of his songs,
I
maybe.
don't know his lyrics. I don't know any of his lyrics.
Yeah.
Um,
So, I kind of get that. I kind of relate to that, right? When people will say these artists do these huge numbers, billions of streams. I think I saw something recently that Drake had
yeah.
15 songs or 10 plus songs with over a billion streams or 2 billion streams, something crazy. And I'm like,
Hmm.
I haven't heard most of these songs. But, I guess I'm not in that target demo either for that type of hip hop.
Right, right. So yeah, this other guy is saying that, he wasn't in the target audience, but neither were country western fans or evangelicals or uptight rich white people on Fox News or any of those groups that are belly aching that they don't get it. The people make these decisions make them based on one thing, money, and how much of an audience they can draw. And apparently they were 100% correct in their choice because this was the most watched halftime show in history.
Okay, can we talk about that part? Because I've seen that repeated a lot as though that proves that everyone tuned in to see Kendrick. And I would say that correlation is not necessarily causation. I don't
Why
think
did,
that
what do
that
you
was,
think they tuned in for?
I don't think it was necessarily because of the halftime show. I think it was because maybe of the game. Maybe they were looking at
But
whether
the
the
halftime show was watched more than the game.
marginally though, right? I mean, there are some people who only watch the halftime show every year, so that's
Right.
not too surprising.
This was by millions.
Okay, but look at so here's what you could do then. You could look at the viewership of this Super Bowl game as compared to last year's. Did more people watch the Super Bowl than last year's? I would wager to say yes. I don't think this
Uh,
was just a result of the halftime show attracting all these viewers. I think people wanted to see if the Chiefs were going to repeat. Honestly, there isn't a lot else to watch anymore because with streaming now, I was thinking about this. Like you turn on the TV and you kind of flip through the channels. On regular TV, you don't really find a whole lot of great stuff anymore. A lot of the good stuff is on streaming, right? So the Super Bowl probably didn't have a whole lot of competition on TV.
um, well, let me see. I'm looking at some numbers here. Let me see if I can get these numbers here. No, this is ads. It's not really giving me what I want
Yeah.
um on the numbers here. Um,
How about this? I know this is going to piss off a lot of people.
uh-oh.
Is it possible that the reason why more people tuned in this year is because of Taylor Swift fans wanting to see her on TV?
It's possible. It's possible. Um, well, here's the thing. It looks like the this year the viewership was 127 million
For the game.
for the game, and then of last year's Super Bowl was 123 million.
So it went up.
So it went up, and then like you said, some people watched just for the Super Bowl, which would have been probably, some Kendrick fans and some fans of Drake's and some Beef fans, all of that. So, it could be they just added on, which increased that number.
Right. Yeah. That's what
So
I
it
think.
looks
But I
like,
haven't seen any proof that the reason why more people watch was because of Kendrick. Now, I'm sure he pulled in some people as well because he does have a lot of fans, right? So let's not say he did nothing, but I wouldn't
oh man, you're
reason.
playing with fire.
Why?
He's gonna drop a diss track on you.
Does he even believe that though? Does he believe he is the sole reason why his show is most watched in history?
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't think he does.
Yeah. So, we had someone else said they just turned the volume off and counted the minutes until the game resumed. I'm gonna assume that that's what they do anyway if it's not a person that they like. Um, so there's some people saying, let's see, it was the first one it was the first Super Bowl halftime show I had to study after.
You know what? Not necessarily a bad thing.
I don't think so either. I don't think so either. Um, and I've seen some comments here that are saying, that they learned a lot, which is good, which is, kind of what we were talking about last time, that, maybe people can take away some other things besides just the flash and whatnot.
Right.
Um, so, and then another comment here, the costumes were boring, the choreography was dull and uninspired. So despite Lamar getting the Grammy wins, the performance failed me, and for actual reasons, not just being a hater. Too
That's
bad,
funny.
because what I'm learning secondhand is that he had an actual message to deliver.
Right. Now I know the halftime show is judged by different standards, right? But that comment is funny to me because I'm imagining going to see a hip hop act at a club, right? At a venue in New York City, let's say, and people
Right.
walking out the door saying, "What'd you think about that show?" Man, the choreography was dull and uninspired. Like you would never hear that.
But I mean, listen, I think fair enough, right? Just because you didn't like it doesn't mean you're a hater, doesn't mean you got some other ulterior motive. It just didn't, meet to the standards of what you're used to, right? Like, because like I said,
Yeah.
the World Halftime Show is usually flash and pyrotechnics and all this, and this wasn't that. And if that wasn't your thing, fair enough. I don't,
Right.
issue with that. I think,
Well, true to a degree, I think, but you also want to look at it for what it is, right? Like when you see these people commenting, he can't sing. He doesn't know how to, he's not singing, he's rapping. You know what I mean? People don't even know what they're looking at sometimes.
True, but I mean, maybe even then, if it didn't hit, I've seen, some
Right.
hip hop heads saying they just didn't hit for them because it was
And
boring. It was,
and that's fine, but and that's the difference between your own personal taste, I think, and
right,
trying to look at something objectively. My problem is not when people say it wasn't for them. Listen, most of the
right,
stuff at the Super Bowl isn't for me. The game isn't for me. I don't even like football, right?
right.
Objectively.
I'm the guy that tunes in to, I'm the guy that goes and looks up the commercials afterwards.
Listen, the unintentional grounding rule is so stupid to me. I learned it when I was a kid, and I pretty much lost interest in football right then and there. Like the quarterback has to pretend or make it look like he's trying to reach a receiver when he's like, so if he's about to be sacked, it's like this like weird loophole that they came up with. It's like he's about to be sacked, and so an incomplete pass will stop the clock, right? So he wants to get the ball off before being sacked, but I guess it was considered too cheap for him to just throw it away. And so, in order to avoid that penalty, he has to make it look like the ball is coming somewhere close to where a receiver is, even though we all know that there's no way he can hit that receiver. It's to me, it's just a failure of the rules, and they're trying to make up more rules, which only really emphasize how stupid the rule is in the first place. And I just never liked football from that point on. Like the rules are dumb to me. But
Okay. You
um,
went a totally different angle.
it's just yeah, it's just not an entertaining game for me to watch because of the way the rules are.
Right.
So maybe it would have been more sense to say the clock never stops or the clock always stops, but to have this thing like where he has to pretend like he's throwing it to somebody. What is that? Uh, anyway, my point is subjectively, I don't like it, but I'm not going to go online and start being critical of aspects of a performance, let's say,
Right.
that I don't understand, that aren't for me, that I don't know anything about. You know what I mean? There are people saying things about this performance who are clearly uneducated and ignorant to what it's supposed to be, what hip hop is, what he was trying to achieve, what he was doing, what he was saying. And so you can say, I didn't get it, I didn't like it, but to try to offer an objective criticism on something you don't even know or understand or isn't for you, right? That's, I think, what irks me.
I think we saw that. That's some of what's happening with the commentary coming from the right and from the Fox News type of crowd. It's like you weren't gonna like it anyway. And
Yeah.
some people are not liking it for other reasons because we've seen commentary like, oh, there wasn't a single white person on stage.
Right.
What is this discrimination? Like, I thought you guys were against DEI. What's going on? But yeah, like the comments like what this guy said, he's like, just for him, it just didn't hit, and I'm
Right.
fine with that.
Yeah, I'm fine with that too. But again, if you have someone going online or wherever and saying that his bars were whack, he couldn't rap, I would ask
Right.
name your top five MCs. You know what I mean? Like
Right,
where are
right.
you coming from?
What bar was whack? Explain why it's whack.
Right, right,
Yeah. So, and listen, I some of the criticism here, one person here said the words were fast and unintelligible. And so to me, I can understand that critique because sometimes I don't get what Kendrick's saying. His voice is a little different.
yeah, yeah,
You
and
know, so
pronunciation.
yeah, his pronunciation, all of that is a little bit different. He's got his own thing. And but I enjoyed it, and neither of us are like Kendrick stans.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know a lot about Kendrick's music. We know, of him. But yeah, I enjoyed it. That was a great show. So
And I'll tell you this, I do understand that part of it, not understanding everything he said. But when
right,
people say I couldn't understand one word he said, I kind of have
right,
a problem with that because
yeah.
to me that just shows that you are completely ignorant to hip hop, like 1,000%. Like you don't even know any hip because
And you might and might be that you are willfully being ignorant to hip
right,
hop.
right, right. And again, it doesn't have to be for you. I don't love football. I don't love country music, but
Right.
uh, you know, I don't know. Would I go online and say I didn't understand a single word that Willie Nelson's song or whatever? No.
No, but if it was Taylor Swift, you would probably say something. You've said some things about Taylor Swift.
Well, what I said is I didn't meet anyone who ever heard her music before. Now she played a Super Bowl. I don't know. I actually did see something that came up on my feeds or something when I was scrolling through, it was like a sing-along people were doing at one of her concerts. And
Yeah.
now, okay, so here's a criticism that not for me, whatever. But to me, she sounded so off key. It sounded like she was doing really bad karaoke. And I'm wondering what, but you know what? Let me not be a hater because maybe she was having an off night. Maybe, whatever. I'm not going to
Yeah.
claim to know her stuff or, what she's all about to be able to make that call. Like she's the worst singer in history. I just don't know enough about it.
Right, right, right. Okay, okay. I don't know a lot about Taylor Swift. I don't get the Taylor Swift haterism that goes on. Um,
Well, a lot of it is political because she endorsed Biden and Harris.
yeah, but even I think some of it also for football fans that are not, I mean, I like her for that, but I think for football fans, because she's such a mega star, and she's dating that player, a lot of times media shifts some of the coverage of football to coverage of her,
Right.
and they're like, "What are you doing to our football coverage?"
Yeah.
Which is not her fault. So she's kind of getting some some
She did.
hateration.
She did get booed at the game, but
So did Trump, from what I heard.
he got mixed, I think, booed, but she got
Yeah,
like very strong boos. But
that's
I also heard that was also because I guess she's from Philadelphia, the Philadelphia area, used to be an Eagles fan. Now she's rooting for the other team, whatever. But
right.
yeah, I did see an article talking about it makes some people uncomfortable because it represents gender role reversals in a sense.
I don't get it.
Because yeah, it was kind of a weird argument, but I kind of understood where they were coming from. Kind of what you were saying that she is put front and center instead of him. So I guess it kind of was looked at by some as emasculating, like it's making him look weaker because she's getting all the attention. And
She's
so,
more famous than him.
right, yeah, no, it makes sense. But
Yeah,
I think it was an attempt to explain some of the pushback by some, macho, maybe toxic masculinity types, right?
right,
Who, like, what happened to our football, damn it? Because the thesis here was that it made the star football player look weaker in comparison to his girlfriend.
right, right. You know, I don't think I don't see that angle for me. That's not for me. But I can understand the angle of being upset that you're tuning in for your game and the coverage and analysis of that, and they keep talking about something that's outside of the game.
But do they really? There was a bet. I believe the over under on one of these betting sites was 6.5 on the number of times she would be shown on screen. And it was, as far as I can recall, much less. She might have been shown once or twice.
Right.
Now,
Maybe it's been toned down in recent.
I think part of it is in response to the backlash, the vocal backlash. I think part of it was because Kelsey only made like one or two completions all game, and so usually they'll show her after he does something good on the field, right? And he just was kind of
Right.
quiet this game. So the whole Chiefs got blown out as we saw. So that might have something to do with it as well. But I think people saying that she's on TV all the time might be exaggerated. Maybe she was in the beginning. I don't watch all the games. I don't know. But from what I've seen, like when I see the playoffs, or you know what I mean? Like I don't see her that much on TV.
Right. Well, you know what? I say shout out to Taylor Swift. Hit us up. You can come on here and we can discuss this.
Yeah, she definitely was cool with us on MySpace back in the day before she became famous.
I don't remember that.
Oh yeah, before that was kind of what she was doing in the beginning before she really got on. She was establishing those connections with fans personally on MySpace. And here's the reason why I didn't like her initially. She put on her MySpace page. Now she was a kid, young, right, at the time, but on her MySpace page, she wrote Republicans do it better. And so I was like, oh, here's a Republican chick coming out, but I guess her
What? I
haven't.
don't remember. I don't
Yeah.
remember her on MySpace back in the day. But
Oh
you know,
yeah.
a lot of people were back in the day, so like a lot of connections. So it's funny. But okay. Well, so come yeah, as MySpace alumni, she should come on the show and talk with us.
Yeah. We also played, I don't know if you remember this, on one of our old radio shows.
Hmm.
We played the Malcolm Moore song "Welcome to MySpace" way before he
Right,
was famous. He was an underground artist in Seattle, right? And he had
right,
that song about MySpace. We played it because of the song. It was a funny
all
song,
right.
right? And he ended up obviously blowing up commercially. Well,
Uh,
before we move on to our final topic here, I did want to mention that I'm pleased because we're talking about music. I'm pleased that the checks have been coming in. Of course, I want to see them bigger, but it is nice to get that direct deposit for the music. You know what I mean? You get that, and I'm like, all right, this is good. The streams are in. We went over 50,000 plays on Spotify alone. We're doing well on Apple Music, YouTube Music, and so it is nice to see the momentum. I just received word that I'm in the top 50 now. I believe. Let me see. Is it number 36 today on the Hyped It streaming hip hop chart for Bring Rockets Back? So that song continues to do
Nice.
well on streaming. Yeah, it is nice to see those checks coming in.
And in that vein, I wanted to send out RIP and condolences to Nasty Ness, who passed away this past week. He's been a long time staple in the hip hop industry, going back to the 80s, like in before. He was with the Sir Mix-a-Lot crew. He does a lot of promotions. He ran the charts that our song charted on.
Right, right. We got to number 4 on that chart.
Yeah, so yeah, he just passed away. He was in the hospital previously for like a heart attack, and then he'd been in for a long time, and then he got out and was on the road to recovery, and then for some reason suddenly he passed. So rest in peace to Nasty Ness.
Rest
Always
in
a good.
peace. Also, a big part of the Pacific Northwest hip hop scene, right? The Seattle area.
Absolutely. See,
Yeah,
coming out of Seattle.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Yeah. I just checked number 34. Bring Raucous back today on the streaming hip hop chart. So moving up, I would love to see another top 10, right? On one of these charts. It's always nice.
Absolutely.
I want to get into discover mode. I don't even know if I want to use it, but I want to have access to it. That's what we talked about. That's a little bit controversial on Spotify because some
Right.
people have likened that to payola, where
Right.
you take a cut in terms of the money you get per stream, but in return, they're supposed to blast your music out to more people than they normally would, right?
Right. Right.
So at least when you get to a certain threshold, you have access to it, and that just shows that your music is popping enough to be offered that choice. They don't just give it to anyone. So
Right.
it's like another milestone. Anyway, let's move on to this last topic we were going to get into because it came on the news earlier. It's a result of congestion pricing, right? You might call it a consequence of congestion pricing. There were some who opposed congestion pricing on the grounds that, in particular in areas of Manhattan, right, north of 60th Street, it would essentially turn their area into a parking ride since it's so expensive to drive in
Mm.
Midtown and downtown Manhattan, right? The idea was a lot of people would be looking for parking spaces uptown and then,
In those neighborhoods.
right, in those neighborhoods, then taking the subway, the bus, or walking or whatever, or just hanging out there. So that is happening now. You are seeing complaints from people all the way up to Inwood, right? Washington Heights, Inwood, the very northern tip of Manhattan Island, right? But you're seeing complaints that a lot of drivers are coming in and parking their car in their neighborhood. Well, there is a proposal now, and this is being proposed by Council Member De La Rosa, I believe is her name. She is requesting permission or authorization from the state because the state needs, we need to approve this, right? But her idea, her proposal now is to have residents only parking in her neighborhood in uptown Manhattan. I personally don't like it anywhere, not just there. I don't like the idea of residents only parking on a public street. And I've dealt with it. I have personal experience dealing with it. I think a public street is a public street. You don't own the street. Anyone should be allowed to park on a public street. You shouldn't prioritize one person over another on that public street. A lot of people have this misconception that they own the street in front of their house. And you see it in some of these neighborhoods that someone else comes and they park, they'll try to fight you. People put cones out sometimes to hold their spot. That's all obviously not allowed. People do it and they feel like they are entitled to it. They think, I bought this house, I rent this, whatever it is. I live here. This is my property, my house, my apartment, my living quarters comes with this parking space. And no, it might be convenient to have when it's open. You don't own it. It's a public parking space. It's not your driveway. It's a street.
Mm.
Now, I said I've had experience with this. A couple things. I went down to DC, right? We were rehearsing in a music studio in DC. It was with Isaac and Chris and these guys. Shout out to them. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that it was residents only parking on all the streets surrounding the studio. And I came back and I got a ticket. And I'm like, what is this? I'm coming down from New York to patronize this music rehearsal studio. They don't have their own parking lot. Where am I supposed to park? I parked on the street close by and I got a ticket for
Mm-hmm.
not being a local resident. What is that? That's discriminating against an out of
And
towner,
how
right?
do they know that you're not a local resident?
Well, number one, the plate is a New York plate. Number
Ah,
two, I think you actually have to have a sticker. It's not just anyone in DC. I believe you had to actually live in that neighborhood, like that area, and get a sticker on your car to show. And I think
okay,
with these programs, you usually have to pay for the sticker as well. So
okay.
I didn't know. There might have been a sign somewhere down the block or something, right? But it wasn't like by every spot because the whole neighborhood was subject to this. So where I was at, I didn't see anything warning me of this, and I got a ticket. Now, this also happened to me in Boston, where I was
This
visiting.
is personal for you.
I was
This is
visiting
personal for you.
Boston. I didn't get a ticket this time, but I was looking up best coffee shops to visit when I was there, right? Or best breakfast spot, something like that. I was trying to find a place to go in the morning when I got up, left the hotel. And I found this place that I got great reviews. It was a neighborhood coffee shop in Boston. You know, again, not on a main commercial strip. It was in a neighborhood, residential area. I went there. Maybe that's why I got the best reviews, right? Because it was kind of like off the beaten path, like little, maybe mom and pop kind of place, neighborhood
Mhm.
owned and operated. People love their local coffee shop. Awesome. I'm in Boston. I'm in a different place. I love exploring the area. I want to check out this local coffee shop. I go, and this time I'm driving around and I see the signs. All of the signs around there are for residents only parking. There was nowhere for me to park in that entire neighborhood if I didn't live there. And so I couldn't go to this coffee shop and I ended up just leaving. They didn't get my business because of it. Right.
Right.
You know, what are we doing? I understand the concern. It's bad in Queens. People have brought this up to me in Queens around here. Ozone
Well,
Park,
let's
Woodhaven. They say it's really terrible to park. Can we do residents only parking? I understand there's a problem. In my opinion,
right.
this isn't the way to do it.
Well, yeah, like in this situation here, and I guess it can apply to everything, but in this particular situation, because this problem is being caused by congestion pricing,
Mm-hmm.
um, isn't there some reason, isn't there something that should be done to combat that? Like because of this thing, now all of a sudden the residents can't even park where they're at.
Yeah, what should be done is you don't have congestion pricing. I mean, you're doing a bad idea. Bad things are happening, and now you're saying, "Well, let's try to find ways to patch it up so that we can keep this bad idea in place." How about you don't do the bad
This is
idea?
this is what's gonna happen. Is people are driving in and they're going to these neighborhoods above to because of the congestion pricing. They're parking there and then taking the subway down to where they're going. So what's
Yeah,
gonna happen is the people living in those neighborhoods are now gonna have to go and park downtown and take the subway back up to get home.
and they're going to have to pay the fees of
They're
driving.
gonna pay the fees.
No,
That's
the whole
crazy.
thing is insanity. What you need to do is provide better public transportation. I mean, how many times have I said that? Right? You
Right.
want to have
Yeah.
cars off the road, incentivize public transit, right?
Right.
A lot of people I hear from tell me they're afraid to take the subways now because of the crime. Well, that's an issue. You need to deal with that. You need to deal with
Right.
access, better service, right? All of these things.
Right.
But what you're doing is you're creating a scheme that's punishing people for driving, right? And now, because of the negative side effect of that, you're proposing to punish more people, continue punishing, right? Because what people are doing is they're parking there because they can't afford or they don't want to pay the fees of driving downtown, obviously. So your answer
Well,
to that is like, we understand that this has caused a situation that's harmful to you or that's hurting you. Our answer to that now is to hurt you even more by saying you can't park here at all.
well, as a resident of that neighborhood, I could understand calling for residents only parking. As a resident of the neighborhood, because now I mean, you can't get home. Like you can't park at home. I could understand that situation.
You're about to get the rubber chicken of the week.
I'm just saying that would make to someone living there, because if you come home from work and now you can't even park, so now you got to drive around for a half hour to find
So
parking just so you can go home. I could
I
understand
absolutely,
calling
yes,
for that.
I absolutely sympathize with that. And again, that goes back to this was a bad idea in the first place. But
Sure, absolutely a bad idea in the first place.
in Woodhaven, I've heard such horror stories. I've knocked on doors throughout, Ozone Park, Woodhaven, all these neighborhoods. So I've talked to all the people who live here.
Right.
Parking comes up more than any other issue in Woodhaven. And what you'll hear is things like, ma'am, I came home from work. I couldn't find
Uh-huh.
parking, right? I circled the block 20 times, 30 times. There was nothing. I
Uh-huh.
started to look on the other side of town, nothing, right? Kept going around, nothing, nothing, nothing. It was late it was really late. I had to get ready for work again in the morning, so I didn't know what to do, and I didn't want my car to be towed or whatever. So I just fell asleep in my car. I've heard people say,
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I can empathize with residents calling for resident only parking there. Now, do you think, I know you're opposed to it, but do you think the result of having resident only parking would be that instead of people driving in and parking there and then taking the subway down, they would just take the train for their whole trip, which is probably the point of having the congestion pricing in the first place to get people to take the train the whole trip instead of just part of it.
but if they are going to these measures, I don't think it's that simple for them for whatever reason, right? Either they can't, it's not convenient, they're afraid of the train, they're really opposed to it, whatever it is. They are going out of their way now, right, to avoid doing that.
But if they've got if you take away that choice, the option of them to be able to park, then now they don't have now they either got the fees to pay
Right.
or they can't park their car. So the only other option would be to take the train the whole trip or park further away and then take the
Right.
train.
Or
Either
put
way
it in
you
a
take it.
commercial garage and pay more money.
Or a commercial well and commercial garages in New York are ridiculously
Yeah, they
overpriced.
are.
It's
No, they
crazy.
are. It oftentimes is actually cheaper to Uber to the city, depending on
Insane.
time of day and where you are and everything else. But you know, here from Queens, right, to Midtown Manhattan, your Uber could be over $100, depending.
Yeah.
But so can putting it in a garage for a few hours.
Crazy.
And they often lie to you on the signs, and they'll try to get you in by saying, 9.99 first hour or something like that. And it's
Right, right, right.
always nonsense. Or if it's $10 that first hour, it's $100 the second hour or whatever.
Yeah.
So it always is crazy. There apparently are ways though to get cheaper parking, and I never really knew about this until I was looking into it more recently. You could use apps, and I guess if you reserve your spot in a parking garage using some of these apps, you can control the
Right.
price, keep the price down. I've seen
Oh,
there are things that you could do as opposed to just blindly going into a lot, which is what I would end up doing. Uh, so maybe people will start looking into solutions like that more. Um,
right,
will more people take the train? Maybe. I think that's the idea in the first place. But I've always said
right,
the way to do it is with the carrot, not the stick. Give us better public transit and find more people on the train than trying to punish people out of their job. And what if it ends up with people just not going to the city anymore, saying, you know what, I'm going to retire early, or I'm going to get another job. I'm going to start working from home. I'm just not doing it anymore. I know to
I've
some
got
they might be like, well, that's good in the sense that it gets cars off the road, I guess, but you're
right.
also hurting arguably the economy of the city by having people not come, not patronize the businesses, right? Not be there anymore.
Listen, I'm proposing zip lines. Just zip lines to the city from the outer boroughs. Instead, people can zip line in.
Yeah, I prefer that to residents only parking. And I know,
It is another option of it is transport option. It's
right,
adding to the choices.
more public transit is good, right? More public transit is better than less public transit. So I know that these schemes have survived constitutional scrutiny, but to me, they always strike me as unconstitutional, as violating the privileges and immunities clause in
Hmm.
particular, which is that people in one area should have the same freedoms and rights as people in another area. You shouldn't discriminate on someone based on where they live. And there's
Hmm.
also the freedom to travel, right? That's implicit in the 14th Amendment. I think you're impeding on that by saying that a public street is only for the residents of a particular neighborhood. So it's not really a public street anymore at that point, is it?
Right, right. Absolutely. So,
And we know
all right.
parking is hard enough. Uh, it's crazy. I mean, in Manhattan, it's it's very hard to park in Manhattan. We know this, right? You're
Yeah,
trying to make it
it's
worse.
ridiculous.
Basically, what they're trying to do is say you're not allowed to park in Manhattan at all unless you live on these blocks.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Rubber chicken of the week, and the rubber chicken of the week goes to people who continue to propose punishing solutions. Right? Your whole worldview is let's make it harder on people. Let's toll people more. Let's charge people more. Let's punish people more instead of trying to make their lives better. I mean, isn't that a novel idea? Why aren't people thinking of that? incentivize what we want to see people do instead of trying to punish what we think they shouldn't be doing. Rubber chicken rule.
Absolutely. You know what? I have an idea. You know what we
Yeah.
should do? Great business idea.
What's that?
Let's buy an old oil tanker and convert that into a floating parking lot for Manhattan. I think we got it.
Loading parking lot. Listen, I always said if you could invent or develop an app that will reliably show you where the available street parking spaces are, you'd be a billionaire. Now, I know that there were attempts to do it, but in very clumsy ways. Like it might have been San Francisco, somewhere in California, where they were trying to put sensors on the street to be able to tell if the
Right.
car was on it. And that's obviously a very expensive and ambitious project. If there's a better way of doing it, I don't know if you would use GPS tracking, satellite data, something, helicopters. I don't know what you would do, but if there's an efficient or a better way of doing that, where you could reliably have up to date info on where there's a public parking spot, that's a game changer.
I don't think that would work because you got so many people that everyone would see that open spot, and by the time you even get anywhere near it, it'd be taken already. I
But
think
there's so
here's a
many
better
spots.
option.
There are so many spots opening up constantly, though. You go to the next one then.
Here's a better solution. And this, I think you'd be a complete billionaire. If you can, so we got cars that do autonomous driving,
Right.
right? And using their AI systems. So have the AI system, you pull up in front of your place, you get out, and then the car goes and searches for parking on its own, and
Mm,
then goes and parks itself. And then when you're ready to leave in the morning, you just, alert them that you're leaving, and then the car will come pick you up.
like a self valet.
Yeah, that's a billion dollar idea right there.
What if the car can't find a spot because it's in the congestion pricing zone?
Well, it's got to go, keep driving all all night.
Like you wake up in the morning like my car's in Connecticut.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, satisfy parameters as far away as it can go,
or the car just keeps driving around the neighborhood and then like gasses
all
up,
night
charges
long.
itself. Yeah, all night long, it charges itself up, keeps driving. It's like,
Yeah,
oh
absolutely. Absolutely.
goodness, uh,
Yeah.
something needs to be done.
Uh,
Something needs to be done about
uh,
this. And the answer can always be punish drivers, punish the civilians. Shiba was on. Remember, Shiba once said, "How does this help the consumer?"
right.
Nobody's asking that question. It's not meant to help the consumer. Maybe it's meant to help. I don't know, people taking public transit, but you're not giving us good public transit options. So what are you really doing?
Right.
Someone
So
else
with
said.
all the
Someone
no,
else
go
said
ahead.
since congestion pricing, their commute is easier because there are fewer cars on the road, and so they're trying to defend it. And then someone else shot back with because this was in Rockaway, right? Someone else came back with. So wait a minute, you take the ferry to the subway, and fewer cars on the road is making that commute easier.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I guess if you're taking a bus, it wouldn't matter.
Right, right, right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how many people use the ferry, but that was a nice ride.
Oh yeah, beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah. I can imagine now though, it's probably freezing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
All
so
right.
what's the bottom line to all of this?
I was just going to ask you. I gave a good one, but do you have another one?
Um, it's I'm trying to think back to the what we were talking about the Adams situation. Um, it's not, I guess it's kind of related. I'm just saying that, we are in extraordinary times right now, and we want to follow the playbook, but we got to find ways to do it smartly because we're dealing with adversaries that aren't following the playbook and that are actively using it against the playbook. And we've got to do better. Um, and one of the things that I asked was what's the recourse? And you said, voting is one of the recourses. And I think with all of this, not just with the Adams thing, but with everything, like these midterms and any upcoming elections are going to be more important than ever before, and they really need to get out to vote. For example, there are two congressional seats coming up for a special election in April in Florida, and I haven't heard anybody talking about it. And there's only a slim majority in Congress right now on the Republican side, and losing one or two seats could severely complicate the agenda of that side because of, how much you need people to agree with the votes. People should be out there. These are heavily Republican districts, of course. It's a long shot, but it's an off year and less people come out anyway. So if the Democrats came out in full force, they could probably take those seats. But the Democratic Party needs to be pushing for it. The people in that area need to be pushing for it. People need to realize the situation that we're in. Everything seems to be very unprecedented. And if we're going to stick by our guns and the rules and moralities and this and that, we're going to have to be a lot more proactive in this regard.
Yeah, I agree with that. People can find us where podcasts can be found. Nuance with Mike Scala and Jay Carter. We're on YouTube. We're on Instagram. We're on Reddit. We're on social media. So join the conversation. Let us know what you think. As always, we've got work to do. Thank you for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.